G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we're going to be breaking down some fixture analysis and talking a little about trading. Let's go!
Just done it from nowhere. Hoisting the goal from inside the centre. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty. Petty. Petrarca. Oh, wow. How good is that? The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey. You can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy, and I'm here with Luke. How are you, man?
I'm going good, mate. Recording 2 podcasts in one night here. I don't think I've ever worked this hard in my life.
The astute YouTube audience will notice we are wearing the same clothes as the last podcast.
I thought about just getting the kit off for it, just to make sure it's different.
Mate, no one wants to see that. Let's keep that away.
Yeah, like I said, I never worked this hard. This is unbelievable
Mate,
stuff.
we're putting in the hard yards for the audience right now, trying to bang out a lot of content pre-season. You're going away on camp. That's the reason we're doing this. So
yeah, true.
You do have another job.
I do. I'm heading off. I mean, some might not call it a job. Like, if I get to go on Year 7 camp for the next 4 days.
Where are you going,
so
actually?
It's over on the north side. It's like a YMCA, like, outdoor adventure camp. So
sounds like a great time.
I'm going to be up on the high roads. I'm going to be canoeing. So you can't really,
good life.
You can't really call it work, can you?
Okay, well,
it means we're recording twice tonight.
Yes, so today we're going to be going through a bit of fixture analysis. Now, I've dug through a few things that I pay attention to when it comes to fixture analysis. Now, I will say, off the top here, I know a lot of people can go really hard in terms of draws and things like that. Who's got an easy draw, who's got a hard draw to start the season. In my opinion, it's one of the very last things that I'll look at.
You're not knocking the scale of hardness,
well, I don't know. The scale of hardness.
Oh, my goodness.
And they do say this every podcast. It's a tool. It's something to use.
Disclaimer.
But in my opinion, when it comes to like a general draw fixture in terms of hardness and things like that, I don't put a lot of stock into that when picking my premiums, my mid-prices, my rookies, anything like that. But there are a few things that I do look at when it comes to maybe splitting hairs.
You might pay more attention mid-season.
Yeah, I think that's probably more the case if I'm trying to jump on an upgrade target and they've got a good matchup coming up. I might launch into that because of the instant reward kind of thing there. But in terms of you're picking, especially premiums, and a lot of the times the mid prices that you are expecting to take that step to premium status, you're picking them for the whole season. So it's all going to come out in the wash anyway.
Yep.
We're not. It is nice to get off to the season to a flyer, but in saying that, a lot of these guys, you hope they're going to be there for the entire season, so it doesn't really matter. So
maybe if we didn't have other jobs, we could deep dive.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the two main things that I want to have a look at. The first thing I want to have a look at for the start of the season are taggers. Taggers are, especially for our midfielders and now a bit more with our halfbacks as well. They're often things that can not derail your season, but if you have a premium that comes up to a tagger in the early parts of the rounds and they get clamped, the Matty DeBoer was the guy for several years. Yep. What happens is then their score is impacted a lot. They score a dud score, their price comes crashing down, and then by the time upgrade season comes along, everybody's jumping on at a cheaper price than what you paid for. So when we can avoid it, I am trying to avoid tags early in the season.
Yep.
These guys are probably going to be coming up against them at some point, but we want to avoid them early in the season. So I'm going to highlight a few teams and their taggers and who their matchups are for the first 6 rounds. I've selected 6 rounds because that's usually by round 6 we're doing upgrades. So that's when people are starting to jump on. So if we can avoid that for those first 6 rounds, that's looking pretty good. So the first guy that I think I want to talk about in terms of known taggers. Now, sometimes these taggers come out of the woodworks from nowhere. So we're going to start with the guys that I think we can expect tags to come from pretty likely. The first one is in Essendon. Jai Caldwell apparently has been training in the preseason as a tagger.
Training as a tagger. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. You're a pretty good footballer, but you're actually going to train as a tagger.
Yeah. So, look, and he did a few jobs last season as well. So his first 6 rounds, I'll just rattle them off and then I'll get your thoughts on this kind of a thing. But round 1, Hawthorn. Round 2, Gold Coast. Round 3, St Kilda. Round 4, the Giants. Round 5, Melbourne. And round 6, Collingwood. So we've got a few obvious targets in these teams and a few not so obvious targets. I guess starting at round 1, there's not really anyone we have to consider in that game.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're going to be tagging Hall. I mean, you noted here Newcombe, but like you said, I don't think there's really any need for them to be tagging against Hawthorn, but we'll see.
We'll see how it goes. The next one here, I think, is pretty much a certainty in my eyes, but Took Miller will be tagged in round 2.
You wouldn't tag
Noah Anderson? No, I don't think so. I think Took is still the guy. I think he's
that elite rig.
Yeah, he's the All-Australian. He's a decent user. I think that he is a very obvious target for me. So, again, he's not playing this practice match, I think, as well. I think they're saying he will be ready for the start of the season. And he was popular prior to that injury, but I think just based on that alone, when you're sort of deciding about him and another player, I think that's, like I said, splitting hairs, a reason for me to go.
Yeah, that's it. Just keep in mind who these guys are playing early in the season in case it does influence a premium that you're picking. And then they go to the Saints, so potentially Steele. I would kind of say most likely Sinclair, depending on what role he's playing. If he's waxing across half-back looking to set them up, then I'd probably go to Sinclair, because I just feel like some of the things that Jack Steele does is not taggable. It
is also going to be dictated by the midfield makeup of the Bombers as well. So if Caldwell is in the midfield, or is he going to be playing a bit more of that forward role? He definitely has done in the past, so he could also
forward clamp.
Do a forward clamp on a Sinclair. I agree with you, and I think he'll go more that way, because then you can still get players like Parrish, Merritt. Who was the other guy that's come from Carlton as well? I'm blanking on the name.
Setterfield,
rolling through there. You've got another few guys that can sort of pop in, so I think there is room for him to move out of that midfield and put someone else in there that you like as well. So I agree that Sinclair is the guy there. And maybe it's a bit of wishful thinking because I've got Steele in my team right now. But there is maybe a slight flag that Steele will get tagged. But it's not as obvious to me as like a Took Miller.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's fair enough.
I want to get your take on here. They've got the Giants in round 4. Who are you tagging if you're the opposing coach for the Giants?
It's all role dependent. If you're playing the Giants, and it probably by round 4 they'll have some indication of who's playing well in what role. So for me, there's 3 guys you could tag. And there's one that sort of, in my mind, might surprise you there. So Cogs you could tag in the midfield. For me personally, I wouldn't. If Kelly was playing in the midfield, he'd be my main one that I'd look to tag. But the other guy that I'd actually look to tag off half-back is actually Lockie Whitfield.
I was thinking that one as well when we were talking about Sinclair.
Yeah, and you've got Green down here, and obviously Green's a gun midfielder. But what Green does, in my eyes, doesn't really warrant a tag. He's a little bit like...
Teams have sometimes done that before with tagging like a Libba in the past, like stopping it at the source kind of thing.
Oliver. I guess so. It just... What they do is so hard to tag, because often what they do is they're actually doing their best work with a bloke hanging off them anyway.
Yeah, so it's like how effective is your tag, actually?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You could be you could be in his back pocket, but the work that Oliver, Green, Libba, the work they do is always with someone in their back pocket. So that's just my take on that one. But yeah, Kelly, for me, if he's playing in that midfield.
The Whitfield thing would be very interesting. Like if Whitfield is tagged in round 4, he's playing off halfback. Come round 6, gets DPP. That means he's going to have a poor score in there. His price is going to come down. He's going to be defensive eligible.
Yeah.
That could be a pretty juicy upgrade come round 6 or 7.
Isn't he always? He finds a way to be juicy.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure we'll be thinking about him at some point this season.
Me bringing him up is more predicated on if he gets off to a flyer in the first 3 rounds and Essendon come up and go, geez, Lockie Whitfield's setting him off half back. Okay, cool. Well, go do the job.
Cogs is the other one that I put in there, but I agree with you. It's probably less likely than likely. I think...
It doesn't absolutely kill you.
Yeah. He's kind of just does okay, but not like you said, not someone that's going to kill you. But Kelly, if he's in there and getting a lot of the ball, you could do. You could even tag him in a wing. I think it's an option. So for me, I think probably Kelly or Whitfield are probably good shouts there. So
start the season.
Interesting one there. Melbourne again. You've got 2 guys there, Petrarca, Oliver. sometimes it's just like, what do you do? I still think that Petrarca's probably the guy that you're probably going to be more effective at tagging.
Yeah.
So I think
if it was me,
I'd be going there. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the same. But then I see Petrarca in a way, I see Petrarca as untaggable, because if I'm Christian Petrarca and I got a bloke follow me, like, okay, come to the forward line.
Yeah.
Like, put it on my head, boys.
See if you can hang with me up there.
Yeah, put it on my head. He's just going to hold the hand out. Caldwell, you're over there. Bang, mark, goal. Like, I don't know. What do you do when you got guns of that caliber? But I think if Caldwell is going to go to anyone, it could be either of those two. Probably not Brayshaw if he's off halfback.
Yeah, I thought of Brayshaw too, but I think
probably not.
The fact that you've got Oliver and Petrarca in there, if you're going to tag, I still think you still try and go to those guys ahead of a Brayshaw there, in my opinion.
I actually think this next fixture is a really interesting one.
Collingwood.
So Caldwell plays Collingwood in round 6, and of all the guys that I'm tagging at Collingwood, it's Dacos as well.
It's Dacos, isn't it?
I mean, it flies in the face of everything I'm saying about get Dacos. Yeah. But
he gets clamped in round 6.
I see him potentially going to Dacos, and I see a lot of taggers doing it as well. But the thing that gives me some hope that he might be able to cope with the tag is that I just don't see Fly McRae or his teammates letting him just get shut out of a game.
Yeah.
I don't see them just sitting by and going, oh, well, we'll just let him get shut out of the game and we'll just keep going about our business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, with a guy of that
caliber.
But
does that even still, like, you know, we're paying for 87 for a player like that. You want him to get to 95.
Yeah, can he do that with a bloke hanging off him?
Even if he is being moved around and they're trying to get a tag off him, like, it's still going to, you know, take a haircut off his scores.
Yeah. He could be the guy for you that is like you're the most kind of 50-50.
Yeah, I really am struggling with it. And if I bring it on to the next guy that we're going to talk about, the St Kilda tag, Marcus Windhager, again, new coach who has a tagging history.
Yeah.
Windhager did some tagging jobs in the...
He's got a proper tagging history.
He does,
like,
yeah. He was tagging last year, and they've got another guy, I think.
I reckon he was finding ways to tag blokes when he wasn't coaching. He loves a tag
St Kilda actually sometimes ran 2 taggers last year. I think was it Burns or someone else was also running the tag. But I think Windhager is probably the guy that will get that on a weekly roll. Again, I'll go through their first 6 rounds. Freo, I think Brayshaw is the obvious tag target there. Bulldogs, Bont is probably the obvious tag target there.
Yep.
Again, you could argue maybe the forward thing. Essendon, week 3, so they're probably tagging each other. I think Merritt, for me, is probably more likely the guy there. Gold Coast, Took Miller, again. So there's 2 tags in the first 4 weeks.
Yep,
and then in round 5, again, you've got Collingwood. So Collingwood go up against Essendon. St Kilda round 5. Essendon round 6. You've potentially got back-to-back tag games in round 5 and round 6 there for a player like Dacos, who you're expecting to be a premium defender. You can see where I'm heading with this.
I know.
I think from memory he's also got Geelong.
We're not going to be able to field a backline.
Yeah, he's got Geelong in round 1, Brisbane round 2. They're also tough teams. So this is where I split hairs, and the Dacos thing, I think he's going to be a good pick and he'll average well across the season. But when you're picking a player to try and break out and be a premium in his line when he hasn't done that before, second-year player, potentially 2 tags in the first six rounds, it's a little concern for me.
It's definitely,
what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's definitely something worthwhile noting is just have a bit of a look through the sort of first 6-round fixture of all the premiums that you've got in your team and just do a little bit of, do some calculations and just sort of see what are some tough fixtures and what are the taggers there? Because, I mean, it can make all the difference. It's, all the points you're making are so valid, but I'm just trying to give it the la, 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 la. I don't want to hear it almost, but I mean...
that's the thing, though, because he's so popular, there is that kind of, like, group think, he's a gun, he's going to be naturally better in his second year, just put him in there, we're struggling with defenders, but... And contrast with the fact that I don't think he's got the ceiling or consistent ceiling yet to burn you if you don't go with him. Like, I don't think he's going to be putting 120s on your head those first 4 weeks before this.
Yeah. Man, I mean, like, if I take off
I'm going to lose sleep over this decision.
If I take off my Dacos coloured glasses, there's definitely a situation where I can see you sitting here giving it the I told you so.
Yeah, I could be eating my words too because 50% of the comp's going to have him and I don't. But look, he's still in consideration for my team. And just to finish off with Marcus Windhager, round 6, they've got Carlton. I'm sure he's going to try and tag Patrick Cripps. Patrick Cripps probably won't give a shit.
Mosquito.
Just do his thing. But yeah, he'll likely go there as well. So the next one here, I've listed Hawthorn for Connor Nash. Now, I don't think this is going to be one of those things that says a tag in, week out. They have used him as a tagger before, but new coach in Clarko.
Yep.
And I think Hawthorn strikes me as the kind of team that will, at least in the start of the season, try to match up a little bit with teams and give it a go, and then bring in the tag if they need to, maybe halfway through the game or on a particular matchup if there's an obvious tag target. But to me, this is not as obvious as those first two guys. But what are your thoughts? Like, do you see? I mean, I don't know. Do you know any history of Clarko and his uses of taggers in the past?
Not that I would speak about really, really confidently, but there's an interesting thing that could be at play here with Hawthorn as well. Sometimes what young what clubs with really young players will do is they'll say, hey, Josh Ward, I want you to go and, it's not maybe a hard tag, but I want you to go and run with, Jack Steele and just kind of learn your craft by sitting in his back pocket a little bit.
Before,
it might not be a hard tag, but I mean, there's a scenario where Alistair Clarkson might say week to week, hey, young fella, I want you to go and sit in Christian Petrarca's back pocket and, just run around with him, try and stop him getting the ball, and I want you to learn a bit about footy as well. So that's, not a hard tag by any means, but that's, certainly something that could happen.
Okay.
We'll see.
So their draw is Essendon round 1, so probably Merritt is the guy there we talked about before.
Yep.
Sydney round 2 is an interesting one. I've got Chad Warner written here as well.
I'll be going straight to Errol.
He is
Lock the man down.
Lock the man down. No, not if he's in my fantasy team. But that's that one I'm a bit iffy on. Maybe it's a Callum Mills, but again, probably more Warner. Yep. North Melbourne is the next team that they verse. You go LDU, Simkin are potentially the ones there, but again, could be a nobody.
Yeah.
Geelong, Patrick Dangerfield is probably still the guy, would you say? Or Guthrie? Who is it? It's probably still Dangerfield, right?
Yeah, Dangerfield showed in the finals last year that he can still easily take a game away from you and just absolutely destroy you. I don't know. There's not a real obvious one there. Probably Dangerfield, maybe a bit of Guthrie. Maybe Tom Stewart. But is it a tag? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those ones that this is, again, based on the team, but also the matchups. I can see them maybe not tagging too much early parts of the season and doing a bit more later.
Yep.
GWS we talked about before, so maybe the Kelly, Whitfield kind of types. And then in Adelaide, I've got Jordan Dawson here as well as a Rory Laird.
I'd go to Dawson before I went to Laird.
I probably would too. I think Dawson's obviously more damaging. Laird is, an accumulator, but very handball happy, doesn't penetrate with his kick as much as like a Dawson would. But again, it's a forward tag versus a mid tag. So
that one with Hawthorn and Connor Nash is just it's like a miniature flag.
Yeah, it's a mini flag, not as strict as those first two. Yeah. So just wanted to highlight it there because typically we think of Hawthorn as an easy beat for like lots of fantasy points.
Yes.
But they do have sometimes and they have shown that in the past that they will use a Connor Nash as a tag there.
Yep.
The last one here is another one that, again, based on last season, I do think is likely, but it's been the forward tag, the Ryan Clark tag, and this has been a devastating one for a few different teams in the past. He's done a real good job. So Ryan Clark goes up again, or Sydney go up against Gold Coast in round 1, Hawthorn round 2, Melbourne round 3, Port Adelaide round 4, Richmond round 5, and Geelong round 6. So the main ones I want to have a look at here are in round 2, Hawthorn.
Yep.
Sicily, I think, is the guy he would go to.
Sicily's an interesting one to tag it. What I would probably do if I was Sicily and a tag came to me is I'd just go and play on a tall.
Yeah.
So I'd basically take my man over and I'd say, okay, well,
that's bad regardless for his scoring.
It is bad regardless, but if it then frees up the tag and
they drop it
and then he can go and do his thing again. So there's a bit of cat and mouse there when it comes to tagging, especially when it comes to tagging backman.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of got that in his favour if he wants to play a bit bit of cat and mouse. But yeah, of the Hawthorn defenders, if you were going to try and clamp one, you'd probably do Sicily.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a flag for me for a James Sicily. I'm pretty down on Sicily as it is anyway, but again, another reason for me to sort of go there. Melbourne is an interesting one. Does he go to Angus Brayshaw? And if Salem is back, does he go to Salem?
Yeah.
I tend to think maybe because of the interrupted season, maybe even if he is back, you don't go to Salem and you go to Brayshaw, or do they not tag that game and maybe try and do something with a Petrarca or Oliver? But again,
they could. I mean, they could.
They don't want Clark filling up a midfield spot, I don't think.
Melbourne could easily counter that one too by putting Brayshaw into the midfield, because I don't think then the tag would be as valuable if you were going to tag him across halfback.
Especially if Salem is back and you got another guy there to fill in that halfback role. And
yeah, my gut feel is that Sydney would just kind of go head to head with Melbourne. Especially if their notion is, okay, Ryan Clark, we're looking for a forward tag, then I'd say they're going to go to head-to-head. But if for some reason they think about a midfield tag, then there's a few guys in there that you might like to tag for Melbourne.
I also don't see Brayshaw as kind of that like really damaging kick either. Like he's kind of like a...
he's serviceable. He's an AFL
good.
player.
He collects the ball, but I don't know if
he's not like that run 30, kick 60, break the lines, just absolutely cut you up like some guys. So, interesting. What about...
Next couple ones are a little bit irrelevant, but Dan Houston maybe potentially for Port Adelaide. But I don't see a lot of people going there. Richmond, it's maybe a Vlostone or a Rioli or someone like that.
I'd go to Rioli too.
I would personally too.
If I was going to.
But again, maybe it's no one. I don't know if that's a particularly...
Yeah.
Richmond, I don't think, will be too worried about that. And then round 6, I think this is an obvious one. He did it last year and really clamped him down. Tom Stewart. He, I think he held him to like 20 points in the first half, or 40 points in total, or something really bad.
So
at
interesting.
One point.
Could Tom Stewart become a trade-in target after that fixture?
Well, it could definitely. I think it's someone that, like we sort of talked about with a Touk Miller, or potentially someone like we talked about Whitfield before. You know, this is where you sort of have a bit of an idea. These guys potentially getting tagged early in the season, price comes down, you jump on at a cheaper price. We know they're going to be pretty much close to being the premiums in their line. So as a non-owner, you love to see these kind of games. You go, you're licking your lips and you're waiting for that price to come down, you jump on. But if you are planning on starting with these guys, you've got to be aware of these kind of risks that you are taking, because if they do come down in price, people are going to pay cheaper than what you did, and that cash starts to snowball as the season goes on. So those are all the sort of obvious tags I think we are going to go through today. Sometimes like a team like a Melbourne or a Geelong will sometimes bring in a random type of tag, those obvious guys like a Lockie Neal they've done sort of in the past. But again, for the most week-to-week action, they don't usually tag those kind of guys. So just wanted to flag some of those guys here. So that's sort of the first part of the thing here. The other thing I wanted to just tag with flag with those guys is the guys that we are or have been potentially worried about getting tagged, and use that as reasons to not pick them. Players like a Connor Rosie and a Sam Doherty. I think the fact they don't have, tag concerns in the first 6 weeks, I think is a bit of a bonus or a bit of a tick for them. So especially a Rosie when he comes in with a bit of a discount, so you'll have time for his price to sort of get up without worrying about attention from the opposing teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The other thing that I look for, probably more so than any other position, is the rucks when it comes to fixture analysis, because it's easier to sort of have a look at their head-to-head matchup.
Yeah.
So for me, looking at some of these guys, I'll highlight some of the key ruckmen that we are maybe considering going into the round 1. The first one being the most expensive of the popular options, being Tim English. He has a tough run to start the year.
First 2 games, doozies.
And even the third game as well. So round 1, Melbourne coming against the Twin Towers.
Yep.
Round 2, St Kilda, Rowan Marshall. Round 3, Brisbane. Now, Big O is not the best ruckman in the world, but he is restrictive. He is one of the hardest. In fact, based on the Keeper League pod, Brisbane was the hardest team to score against for ruckman last year.
It doesn't really get much easier too. He goes Richmond round 4. I mean, there or thereabouts, and then he goes Port Adelaide round 5. And I know Port Adelaide just generally as a team are hard to score against.
Yeah, they were poorer last year, but that was without Scotty Lysett.
Yes.
So with Scott Lysett back, I think it's a harder matchup.
And then he goes Freo.
So against Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson.
Jeez, he's going to be run off his feet by round 7.
So by round 6...
He might not make it to Hawthorn in round 7.
So and then I've also just highlighted round 7 here. He goes up against Hawthorn. Now, Hawthorn was the easiest team for players to score against. So potentially, this is where I'm thinking maybe you might want to target a Tim English as an upgrade for someone that if you do start with one of those cheaper options like a Tristan Sherry or a Scott Lysett, by round 7, you might be looking to upgrade that and jump on a Tim English to go against a soft matchup like a Hawthorn. Hopefully, after those tough matchups in the first few weeks, he is also a little bit cheaper there. So, puts a little bit more credence to not starting with a Tim English, in my opinion.
Yeah, it could definitely be a play. I mean, if everything goes to plan there, your value Ruckman is kind of maxed out in value potentially by then, and you just slide on over to a guy who might have dropped a little bit, and then he has a nice soft matchup.
Yeah, absolutely.
You ride him for the rest of the season. Yeah.
Just want to quickly go through Jared Witts next. I know a lot of people I've heard over the last couple of days, talking about Sydney and their Ruckman issues. They're going to have a few injury concerns, and they're going to have potentially a really young Ruckman there. He's got them in round 1, so could definitely go big in round 1. But after that, his draw is actually really tough. So Essendon was the second highest or most restrictive team in terms of Ruckman, which surprised me looking into the stats because we know that their big fella there isn't much chop at the moment yet.
Big Draper, got that.
The mullet Draper. Then they've got Geelong, St Kilda and Freo all in a row. And again, Geelong just tough to score against in general. St Kilda, you've got Rowan Marshall, and then the Darcy-Jackson combo in round 5. So I don't really want to base my decision on a round 1 matchup for a player like Witts. So just sort of my 2 cents on that kind of narrative out there.
Yeah, Witty he was the most consistent ruckman last year as well. So I think if you told me you were picking Witty because you just love consistency and you're hoping that he just pumps out his 95s each week, it's definitely a play. I don't think I would be desperately trying to advise you against that or anything, but it's worth noting that after the first 5 rounds, he could have even dropped in value a little bit if you were looking for him.
Yeah, so. I just wanted to sort of touch on the narrative of he's got a soft matchup round 1. You get him for that reason, but after that, it gets pretty tough to me. So
good point.
You have a big round 1 score and then probably a few poorer scores if you're putting stock into matchups. Darcy Cameron, I want to touch on here as well. Starts off with Geelong, Port Adelaide, Richmond, North Melbourne, St Kilda in that team as well. I've also highlighted the fact that he doesn't play Melbourne until round 12. So obviously we are expecting that to be probably the toughest matchup this year. So he does go a big chunk of the season before he has to do that matchup. But I don't know if there's any really soft matchups in there. North Melbourne, I don't know how they're going to look with, like, maybe is it Tristan Sherry and a Goldstein, or is it just one?
Soft, but like you said, the ones surrounding that, Geelong, Port, St Kilda, Richmond usually doesn't sort of give an inch, but especially Big Nank, and then I don't know, it doesn't inspire me to pick Darcy Cameron, especially with the injury stuff.
Port Adelaide is the easiest based on last year's stats, and again, like we said, we know that was without a Scott Lysett, so he doesn't verse any team not in the bottom half of the ruckman in terms of difficulty. So
Darcy Cameron doesn't.
All of the ruckmans he comes up against in the first half of the season are in the top half in terms of difficulty. So no easy matchups there in the first 5 rounds for Darcy Cameron. No. And Scott Lysett and forget. Now, for him, he's an interesting one. Round 1, Brisbane. Very tough matchup. And for him particularly has... and I'll actually go into his averages here because it's actually putrid. He's got a very poor average against Brisbane over his career. His average against Brisbane for his career is actually 63 for his entire career. So doesn't like playing them. He is versing them in Adelaide in round 1. If I go back to last year, I think he dropped like a 40 against them.
Can I convince myself, because he looks like he does have a couple of soft matchups coming up after that. So can I convince myself on the narrative that he is just going to be so ready to go? He's going to be so pumped up. Round 1 in Adelaide. He's not going to drop a 60 on us.
Surely. I mean,
I'm convincing myself.
Yeah. Last year, round 1 matchup against Lions 2, 42.
Where was it?
It was at the Gabba. It was at the Gabba.
Okay, I'm selling myself. Let me get back
next
on
week, though, 98-95. So he bounced back. And so I guess that, to me, it's a concern, but it's also just something I want to highlight. If you are going with the Scott Lysette and he does come out and he plays a poor game in round 1, maybe it's not one that you panic on and jump ship. I'd be willing to give him two games or 3 games to sort of really see it out, because we know that he does historically struggle against the Lions. So 42 last year in 2021 against the Lions. 49 was also the game he played against them.
Stop reading.
It was also at the Gabba. So last 2 matchups have been at the Gabba. So hopefully maybe the home ground advantage helps him out there. But
I'm convinced
like you said,
he's just going to be so pumped up.
Like you said, after that, Collingwood, one of the easiest teams to score against for Ruckman. Adelaide, you would think that they're actually hard to score against with Big Rob there, but they do leak points.
Rob spends most of his time on the ground.
Yeah,
I mean, like physically on the ground.
On the ground. Yeah, the Talog factor. Shout out to the Hat Chat boys. And then Sydney is easy. Bulldogs, in terms of like tap ruckman, do score a lot of points against the Tim English. And I look like I've put Port Adelaide there, but that can't be right because he is Port Adelaide.
God, he'll do well if he plays Port Adelaide in round 6.
So let me double check that one. In round 6, he versus West Coast. Again, another easy team to score. So after that first round matchup, he does have a run of 5 games before he comes up against St Kilda in round 7, where he does score pretty well. But like we said before, that round 7 matchup, if you can go from a Lysette versus a Rowan Marshall to an English versus a Hawthorn team, that could be a big swing in points. And by then, hopefully, one's gone up in cash, the other's come down in cash, and it might not be that big of a jump. So I think for me, looking into the fixture analysis for some of those key guys, it has strengthened my case for a Scott Lysette, and particularly weakened the case for a Darcy Cameron and a Tim English, just with those fixtures there. So, what are your thoughts with all those?
Looking at all of the stats that you've dug up today, Mitch, I think it's not something that I think should. It's not designed to like scare you, but I think it's just information is power in these kind of situations, isn't it? So, in terms of taggers, in terms of ruckman, I think that the more information you have about their fixture, it can just kind of guide you, and like you said, it can actually just affirm your thinking already, which is always a good feeling too. So there's definitely some strategy to it in terms of looking at those tags and those ruck matchups. So it'll be something that I'll be doing a bit more of in the coming weeks as well. Yeah,
and I think in terms of like the rest of the other players, like your defenders and midfielders and all that sort of type, like I said, I don't use too much of this information for those players in the preseason, but when the season starts to get going and we're in those upgrades round 5, round 6, then you do start to look at, and by then you'll also have more information about the current season and who teams are bidding up against and who is tagging potentially that we didn't think about in the preseason. So don't want to spend too much time talking about those other positions when I think it's probably more of a it'll probably lead you astray more than will actually help you. In my thoughts,
you definitely can get a bit of like choice paralysis with these things, especially when we don't have we haven't had games to watch. You just have so much time to think.
So I think that's where we'll leave it there with the fixture analysis. Let us know down in the comments, guys, your thoughts. Is there anyone that you're particularly concerned or confident with their fixtures in any positions? Let us know if you have any questions down below. Again, make sure you guys are subscribed. We are trying to get that 1K. Give this video a big thumbs up over on YouTube. If you guys also could give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, that would be much appreciated. And until next time, we will catch you guys to talk the last round of practice matches. Let's go. I'll see you later.